Army Brats, Chapter 8. Help! Charlotte looked down at the text that had just arrived on her phone, then grinned. What can I do? She typed quickly to Sophia, then leaned back in her desk chair, waiting for a reply. After a brunch of Dad's blueberry pancakes and sausage, she and Tom had headed upstairs to take care of their homework, a Saturday routine in the Bailey home. Charlotte was almost done with math, which was her last assignment, and she welcomed a break, especially one that involved her new friend. Advice needed, came Sophia's reply, and a moment later a photo followed. Charlotte carefully examined the shot of Sophia's nails. She was clearly trying to do gold stripes on her rose-colored nails, but they were uneven with raggedy edges. The answer you seek is tape, Charlotte typed, then paused before sending it. That was the way she joked around with her siblings, but it sounded kind of babyish. Kind of like the dollhouse she planned to hide if Sophia and Mari ever came over. She deleted the text and started again. Use tape, she wrote instead. You're a genius, came the reply, followed by a string of excited emojis. That made Charlotte's grin even wider, though she wasn't quite sure how to respond. She couldn't say thank you to something that was obviously half a joke. But then what should she say? After considering for a moment, she sent back her own string of emojis, including her two favorites, a jaunty snowman and a scarlet puppy, and hoped that was all right. Gotta go go with my mom to the PX, but come to the pool tomorrow, Sophia wrote. We'll try, Charlotte texted back. The words were casual, but Charlotte's insides were delightfully fizzy from the invitation and the whole exchange. Being friends with Sophia and Mari was so much fun. Of course, Charlotte had liked Brianna and Daisy back in Pennsylvania, and her friend Ella in Vermont before that. But they were girls like Charlotte, the kind of girls who sat near the garbage cans in the cafeteria, who talked about homework and their hobbies, and who passed through the halls unnoticed, which was fine, perfectly fine. But it wasn't exciting, not like Sophia and Mari, who sat at the best table in the cafeteria, who made funny jokes about classmates, and who couldn't walk 2 feet down the hall without people calling to them, wanting to see and be seen with them. Charlotte was a part of that now, a girl people noticed. Even though she was new, everyone already knew who she was, and she liked it more than she ever thought she would. Are you done with your homework yet? Rosie asked. Charlotte startled slightly. She hadn't heard her sister come in. Pretty much, she said, stretching a little, and then standing up. The math would only take another 10 minutes. She could finish it later. Cupcake, who had been dozing in a sunny spot on the rug, ran over to greet Charlotte and Rosie as though she hadn't seen either of them in weeks. Dad says we can go to explore, Rosie said. She bent down to cuddle Cupcake, and the big dog wriggled with joy, her short tail wagging furiously. Sounds good, Charlotte agreed. She reached over to scratch Cupcake between her ears the way she loved. Cupcake rewarded her with an affectionate lick on the hand. Cupcake's lonely, Rosie said. She needs me to find her buddy. Charlotte tried not to sigh at this, at least not out loud. Don't worry, Cupcake, Rosie crooned. I promised I'd find your friend, and I will. Want to get going? Charlotte asked, standing up. It would be fun to check out more of the base. Okay, Rosie said. Let's get Tom. Charlotte followed her sister out of the room, wondering how Tom would react. Normally, she'd assume he would be as eager as she and Rosie were, but he'd been weird the last few days. Quiet and distracted, but denying anything was wrong when Charlotte asked. And when they walked into his room, he wasn't even working. He was just sitting at his desk staring into space. Tom, we're going biking around the post, Rosie announced, brushing her bangs out of her face. And everyone needs to make sure to look for Buddy, she added. Charlotte was seriously getting tired of hearing about this dog Rosie was so worked up about. She was sure Cupcake was just fine without his new friends. Tom had to be as impatient with the whole Buddy thing as she was, but he didn't seem to even have heard. Cupcake nuzzled his hand, and he patted her absently. Hurry up, Rosie said cheerfully. Tom cleared his throat and stood up. Okay, he said, but his voice sounded far away. Are you all right? Charlotte asked for possibly the 100th time since the first day of school. And for the 100th time, Tom nodded mechanically. Yeah, fine, he said. Charlotte bit her lip as she looked at her brother. What was keeping what was he keeping from them, and why? Tom was never one for secrets. None of the Baileys were, but Tom was clearly holding something back as he brushed past, not meeting her eyes. Charlotte sighed, then went after him. After saying goodbye to Dad and Cupcake, the three siblings grabbed their bikes from the garage and pedaled down Bingham Road. Heading toward the main plaza, they stopped at a light on Washington Street and Patrick Boulevard. We are now on page 80. Should we turn here or keep going? Charlotte asked. All directions seemed promising since the base was hopping with activity. Keep going, Rosie decided. They waited for several army jeeps and a civilian car to pass, then rode toward Gettysburg Drive. Charlotte was in the lead, and she didn't stop until they'd reached the obstacle course next to the big training field on Adams Drive. Who do you think is going to win? Charlotte asked her siblings as they pulled up next to her. A platoon was coming to the end of the course, all of them dripping sweat as they raced to be the first one done. I think that woman is the best, Rosie said, pointing at the soldier leaping over a pit of mud before landing gracefully, securing her weapon, and lowering to her belly to shimmy under a maze of razor wire. Yes, she's good. She's really good, Tom agreed. The other members of the soldiers' platoon were close behind, but she was clearly in the lead. Their sergeant, whistle in hand, supervised. She's almost as strong as Mom, Charlotte said, shielding her eyes from the bright sun as she watched the soldiers climbing up and over a wooden wall. She was hot and sticky, just standing there watching. The soldiers must be sweltering, yet none of them slowed. They watched as the sergeant ordered the last soldier over the wall to drop and do 20 push-ups. Can Mom make people do that? Rosie asked. Charlotte smiled. I don't think so, she said. Mom works in the military intelligence training office, and I don't think they have people to do push-ups there. Rosie brushed a stray lock of black hair from her face and crinkled her nose. That's boring, she said. Teaching people how to be super spies and stop the bad guys is not boring, Charlotte pointed out. Rosie considered this and then nodded. I'm thirsty, she announced. Can we get juice? Sure, Charlotte agreed. Her lips were dry and a cold drink sounded great. The Baileys got back on their bikes and Tom led the way down Adams Drive. They passed several administrative buildings, an indoor training center, and a group of soldiers marching in crisp formation across a wide green field. The sun beat down as they passed the barracks, where new recruits lived, and the mess hall next door. We should get library cards, Charlotte called as they passed the big brick library on the corner. Roger that, Rosie called back. They turned on Patrick Boulevard, passing the movie theater and a pizza shop before coming to a stop in front of the small deli that sold newspapers and snacks. The chill of air conditioning wrapped around them as they stepped inside the store, cool and delicious after the sun. Are you getting yucky grapefruit? Rosie asked. She was reaching for a bottle of apple juice. Definitely, Charlotte said. She knew it was strange, but she loved the way it made her lips pucker and quenched her thirst on a hot day, like nothing else ever could. She was pleased to see a row of fresh squeezed juice and selected a container of pink grapefruit, slick with condensation. Ready? Tom asked. He was already up at the register with his lemonade and handing the clerk their money. Charlotte took a gulp of her juice and then followed her siblings to the door. Outside, Charlotte saw Tash coming out of the cafe across the street with her mom. When Tash spotted the Baileys, she headed over. Hey, Tash said. She was wearing out cutoffs and a green t-shirt dotted with musical notes. We're exploring the post, Rosie told Tash importantly. Tash smiled at her. Finding anything fun? We watched some GIs on the obstacle course, Rosie said. Someday I want to try that. Me too, Tash agreed, though it looks kind of scary. Rosie snorted. That's not scary at all. Rosie laughed. Charlotte laughed. It takes more than a wall and some razor wire to spook Rosie, she said, swigging on her nearly empty juice bottle. Tash's eyes lit up. Oh, I know what might do it, she said. Have you guys heard about the haunted house on the alley of Crimson Drive? Rosie's eyes got big. No, she said. Tell us. Charlotte smiled, impressed that Tash was so good with Rosie, and needless to say, she was interested in the haunted house too. It's this old abandoned building, all dark and dingy, with spider webs and boarded up windows, Tash began, lowering her voice. None of the adults will talk about it. They just tell you to stay away and not to ask questions. Ooh, we have a mystery. With a start, Charlotte realized that was exactly what Mom had said about the restricted buildings on post. But all the kids on post knew that years ago the Army used to do experiments there, Tash went on. Top secret experiments. What were they trying to do? Rosie asked breathlessly. The story goes that they were trying to create some kind of super soldier, Tash said, and then it all went wrong, and they had to close it up really fast. All the doctors working on the project just kind of disappeared. What about the soldiers they were experimenting on? Charlotte asked, so caught up in the story she nearly shivered despite the heat of the day. That's the thing, Tash said. Some of them never made it out. So they're still trapped in there? Rosie asked, clearly wrapped. People even say some of them might have died in there, Tash said. So now they're ghosts? Rosie whispered. Any normal 6-year-old would find that a scary prospect, but Rosie just looked excited to find out more. No one knows for sure, but bad things happen when you get near that building. If you get too close, you hear noises like moans, Tom said. Exactly, Tosh said, and they all turned to look at him. How do you know that? Rosie asked. I biked by there the other day, Tom said. I didn't know what it was, but it looked interesting, so I stopped. You went exploring without us? Charlotte asked, her voice suddenly squeaky, her feelings about to be hurt. If Tom said yes, the Baileys always explored cool new places as a team. Always. Tom had an odd look on his face, almost like he was embarrassed. No, I didn't get close or anything. I waited. I wanted to wait for you guys. Charlotte let out a breath. That was okay then. He waited for them before getting to the fun part. Anyway, Tom said, as I was leaving, a GI came and told me that the whole place is off limits. Tosh nodded. Yep, that's what they say, but she broke off suddenly as her mom came up. Hi, Baileys, Mrs. Wilson said cheerfully. Tosh, are you ready? I know you want to get in some practice time before dinner. Right, said Tosh, turning so she could give the Baileys a knowing look before heading off with her mom. Do you think that house is really haunted? Rosie asked eagerly. I'm not sure, Charlotte said, but there's only one way to find out. Let's go see it. Charlotte wasn't sure she believed in ghosts, but Tasha's story was pretty convincing. Charlotte definitely wanted to check out the house for herself and see what was really going on there. And judging from the gleeful expression on Rosie's face, Charlotte knew her sister felt exactly the same way. But Tom bit his lip. He seemed about to say something when the sound of a bugle rang out of the post loudspeaker. The cars driving down Patrick Boulevard came to a halt, and the drivers stepped out of their vehicles. Everyone on the street paused and turned toward the flag that waved in the distance at the central plaza of the post. It's retreat, Charlotte whispered to Rosie. Her sister nodded, her eyes wide. Though they had heard faint bugle sounds before, this was their first time being near enough to the central square to see it firsthand. The three of them stood still as the song played and then placed their hands on their hearts as to the colors came next. The flag lowering slowly into the hands of a waiting soldier as the last notes shimmered in the air. Then the soldiers on the field went back into training. The drivers got back in their cars, and the normal events of the day resumed. That's so cool, Rosie said, her eyes still wide. I know, Charlotte agreed. The whole thing had given her shivers. Mom said that even after all her years of retreat in the evening, revelry in the morning, and taps late at night, she still got chills every time she stopped and took a few minutes to honor the flag. Tom looked relieved. That means it's 5, he said. We'd better head on home. He tossed his empty bottle in the recycle bin on the corner, and his sisters did the same. Charlotte hadn't noticed it was so late, but Dad had said to be back before 5:30. Yeah, I guess this means we'll live to see another day, she said with a grin. Rosie laughed, but as they climbed back on their bikes and headed for home, Charlotte realized that Tom had not even cracked a smile. And that is the end of chapter 8. I hope you're enjoying this book, and I'll see you for chapter 9.